Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, September 24th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Manu.
And I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, I hope you had a good holiday.
Moshe, thank you. It was a great holiday by me. And a happy new year to you and to any of our listeners who celebrate the Jewish New Year.
Yeah, the Jewish year of 5786 has begun. And Jill, I don't know if you're keeping track at home, the various calendars right now, what year it is based on your faith.
I really just know it's 2025 based on how we operate in America.
All right, that's good. That's a start. And most of the world. Okay, so the Gregorian calendar, it's 2025. The Jewish calendar has now begun the year 5786. But it doesn't stop there, folks. For the Buddhists, the year right now is 2568. The Hindu religious calendar is 2082, not to be confused with the Indian national calendar, which is like in the 1940s somewhere. And then, of course, it's the Islamic year of 1447. So, of course, for many of these faiths, the calendar began when these various religions began. So, anyway, fun fact for all of you as you begin your Wednesday.
Okay, back to September 24th, 2025. Tons of headlines. So let's get to it here. President Trump spoke to world's leaders at the United Nations. Why he told them, quote, "Your countries are going to hell."
Yes, that is a direct quote there in sort of the bastion of diplomacy. Trump had some blunt words.
Plus, he flipped positions on Ukraine's ability to keep its territory, what he had to say and why.
Yeah, we'll tell you what he had to say about Putin. And Jill, what the latest that we're learning about this escalator gate, for those of you who've been tracking that online.
Jimmy Kimmel's return to late night, his message on his first night back. A dramatic scene in Florida. The man convicted of trying to kill President Trump last year tries to stab himself after that guilty verdict came in.
Dramatic proceedings there in South Florida. Jill will have the latest.
In politics, we are again counting down to yet another potential government shutdown. Why President Trump canceled a meeting with top Democrats.
All you need to know is the number is 7 days until the government potentially shuts down.
And world health officials are reacting to Trump's claims that Tylenol is linked to autism.
Very controversial press conference from Monday we'll dive into today. Jill, how things have changed since we went to college.
I watch those videos. Every once in a while they'll appear on my feed and I just think, what happened? I mean, this was not the college that I went to 20-somewhat years ago. And speaking of history, Moshe is on this day in history.
Your clue today. Tick, 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 tick.
Okay, President Trump addressed the UN General Assembly on Tuesday in New York City. More than 140 other world leaders convened for its 80th anniversary. Trump decided to put diplomacy aside and speak bluntly to the world body. He called the UN ineffective and pretty much lectured the member nations on how they are failing, in his opinion. He said that he had resolved conflicts around the world while the UN had done nothing. And it comes as wars continue to rage in Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine. He asked aloud, what is the purpose of the United Nations? Here is a bit of the address.
It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words. And empty words don't solve war.
So not mincing words there, Moshe.
Jill, it's sort of like if any of you have seen the 90s movie Half Baked, where he's like, F you, F you, F you, you're cool. That was sort of like Trump's address to the UN yesterday.
It also reminded me of a parent scolding their kid, being like, you had so much promise. You are not living up to your potential at all.
It was riveting television to watch yesterday.
So the UN has gotten criticism for years for not being able to really solve much of anything when it comes to global conflicts. Prime recent examples include The wars in Gaza, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and Sudan, for which the UN called emergency meetings, passed resolutions, and urged ceasefires amid Security Council votes, but with little to no meaningful de-escalation of these conflicts. Trump claimed that he had resolved or was in the midst of resolving conflicts around the world while the UN had done nothing. A new Gallup poll finds that 63% of Americans say that the UN is doing a poor job addressing global problems, citing inaction, ineffectiveness, and lack of power. He said all the UN could offer him was, quote, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Moshe, that's getting a lot of buzz. So what exactly is this about?
So
The
some of
escalator.
you might have seen this video we posted on Instagram last night. Melania and Donald Trump arriving at the UN. They get on the escalator and it immediately stops. And Melania is like a step above the president, and she like almost falls back on top of him. And the escalator's frozen. They then have to walk up the escalator. Fast forward to the speech where suddenly he's dealing with some mic issues, and then suddenly his teleprompter goes out at one moment. Now, the White House has said this is clearly a plot by UN employees to try to embarrass the president. There is no love lost here between the UN and President Trump. This is not the first time he's gone after the UN. The White House has announced plans going back to the first Trump administration and now this Trump administration to withdraw the U.S. from funding various parts of the UN. The U.S. has rescinded hundreds of millions of dollars, might be billions of dollars at this point, in terms of UN funding. The U.S. is the biggest funder of the UN. So there were actually rumors going around the UN that they, would prank the president in this way. The White House has called for an investigation into what took place with the escalator. So all of that top of mind for the president as he was giving this address, partially off of script, and obviously part just sort of winging it, talking about like, you guys are so terrible here at the UN. You can't even like have a functional escalator. Now, I will say, Jill, there was a report last night from the Associated Press that the UN officials are saying that it was a White House official who stopped the escalator, and it was a White House official in control of the teleprompter. So as far as teleprompter gate and escalator gate, a lot of finger pointing happening at the moment. But Jill, let's get back to the serious matters at hand at the UN. Not that this is going to go away anytime soon.
Well, beyond criticizing the UN as an organization, Trump also went after the world leaders who were in attendance in very blunt terms. He focused on migration and climate change during his speech.
It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. Let's see, I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
He warned that Europe in particular is being, quote, destroyed by this double-tailed monster of uncontrolled migration and investment in renewables. He says climate change is, quote, the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. He says renewable energy is a scam. At the same time, climate scientists say that Europe is the fastest warming continent on Earth, and that could threaten things like food security, infrastructure, and public health. So Europe has been taking the lead when it comes to renewables. U.S. climate data shows that 2024 was the hottest year on record globally, with average surface temps nearing the Paris Agreement's 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit limit. The International Climate Accord was first negotiated back in 2015, and that set targets for cutting greenhouse gas emissions to tame climate change. The level set is expected to impact extreme weather, heat waves, wildfires, and droughts. But if you remember, at the start of his second term, Trump moved to withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, we've sort of gone back and forth. Obama was in, Trump 1 was out. Biden was in, Trump 2 was out. And that has effectively been the policy here. There are people within the administration who will acknowledge that the climate is changing. At issue for them, including Trump, is how much does man or humans have to do with it? Now, scientists all agree the climate is in fact changing. And the vast majority of them all agree that it is human-related conduct, all the carbon dioxide that we're putting into the air, that is leading to this warming. But one issue Trump has had, he really has it out for wind energy. He has it out for solar energy. He's all about drill, baby, drill, oil, coal, the things that have been powering energy now for more than a century. So he decided to make that part of the speech yesterday. And then, Jill, no surprise that he went hard on migration. You have, by the way, seen Europeans starting to push back on the amount of migrants they took on in the last decade. Angela Merkel really sort of led the effort there more than a decade ago during the Syrian civil war. And so you're seeing the rise here of conservatives of the right in Europe saying all these migrants so quickly have led to a changing of the culture, a changing of our societies, and we need to reassess that. And so he really was getting at yesterday one of the more controversial issues, not just here in the US, but in particular in Europe, where, Jill, we should remind folks that while in America, you come here as an immigrant, you're suddenly a Korean American, a Sudanese American, an Indian American. No such thing really exists in a lot of European countries where even if you're second, third, fourth generation in as an immigrant in France or Germany or England, ultimately the hyphenated culture, not really a thing there. Germans are German, and no matter how long you've been there, you're not German. So this really is a very controversial issue in Europe. Also, the nature of who the migrants are in Europe versus the US, it's another issue. And so we could get into that on another day, but not surprising there that Trump brought it up, but he was very blunt, of course, with his language, as we just played for all of you. So that was part of the day, was his address. All the world leaders will have a chance to deliver their speeches over the course of the next couple of weeks as the General Assembly takes place. And then, of course, there's all the one-on-one meetings, what they call the bilateral meetings. Among the people that Trump met with yesterday, Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine. And that's where we saw some other news yesterday. Trump taking on a very new tone in regards to Russia and Putin, one we haven't really seen during his presidency, Jill. He praised the heroism of Ukrainians, and he argued yesterday, for the first time that we can mark in his presidency, that he believes Ukraine can win back all the territory Russia has taken from it. Remember, Russia's taken about 20% of Ukraine, about the size of Pennsylvania. And he said yesterday, well, Russia is weak. Ukraine, you can take back all your territory. Here's a bit of what he said in front of the cameras yesterday.
Frankly, Ukraine is doing a very good job of stopping this very large army. It's pretty amazing. This is a war that should have ended in 3 days, 4 days. People said it was going to be very quick, and you got to hand it to the Ukrainian soldiers and everybody involved. And so, Russia doesn't look very distinguished, having taken 3.5 years now, right? It's about 3.5 years of very hard fighting. And it looks like it's not going to end for a long time.
So, of course, this is a very stark contrast to the Trump that we saw over the first few months of his presidency, where he was very much trying to praise Vladimir Putin, really trying to strike an agreement by going soft, trying to effectively enable Putin to get everything he thought Putin wanted, including most of Ukrainian land. He's been saying for a while, since he took office in January, hey, listen, Ukraine, you're weaker here. They're stronger. They've taken the land. You got to deal with it. So the fact that he said this yesterday, clearly the amount of frustration here that he has with Putin has added up. And we've seen that throughout the summer. We've talked about that on this podcast. He had this summit in Alaska, and not only did nothing come of that summit in terms of peace, Putin has ratcheted up his attacks, his drone attacks, his attacks on civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. And then in the past couple of weeks, we've seen Russian jets and or drones fly over a couple of NATO countries, including Poland and Estonia. Jill, that's where we saw another major headline from Trump yesterday. He was asked by a reporter, so what do you think these countries should do if Russian jets fly into their airspace? He goes, shoot them down. That's something that we had not heard and we had not seen. So clearly Trump, after being good cop with Vladimir Putin, seeing that good cop, giving him a bunch of carrots didn't work, he's going with the stick strategy. He's going to go bad cop on Vladimir Putin here, hoping that saying things like Ukraine can take back everything, Russia is weak. Russia's been fighting aimlessly, he said yesterday. Russia looks like a paper tiger. I mean, he knows that is stuff that gets under Putin's skin. So that fascinating to see unfold there at the UN yesterday.
One other major conflict that he dove into, Gaza. Trump called for world leaders to unite around a single demand, which is to, quote, release the hostages now. He urged additional countries not to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. He argued that it is a reward for Hamas's October 7th, 2023 terror attack on Israel. He said Hamas has rejected, quote, reasonable offers for peace amid nearly 2 years of war. The comments came as about 10 countries officially recognized Palestine as a state in just the last 3 days alone. That includes France, Britain, Canada, and Australia.
Yeah, Trump saying directly yesterday that all those countries are effectively giving a win to Hamas. Of course, Hamas has said it's one of the fruits, they described it, one of the fruits of the October 7th terror attacks is the fact that they're getting all this recognition. So Trump's saying you're only making them stronger. Now, the UK, France, and others are saying we don't respect Hamas. We don't believe Hamas has a future in Palestine. But that's one of the complicating factors here is that Hamas still technically runs Gaza. You have the Palestinian Authority that runs the West Bank. We've talked about this as we talked about these recognitions last week and on the Monday podcast, that ultimately any viable Palestinian state will have to come out of negotiations with the Israelis. That's what the U.S. is saying here. That's what Trump is saying here. Jill, before we go, just a couple other notes in regards to the UN. We posted this video that has gotten shared tens of thousands of times, Jill, of Emmanuel Macron running into traffic over on the east side of Manhattan on Monday night. It turns out the French president is like the rest of us in New York City, stuck behind a security cordons. His motorcade got stuck. He got frustrated. Then he was caught on camera calling Donald Trump's cell phone, being like, hey, it's Emmanuel. My motorcade can't get through because your security is blocking my motorcade, and the NYPD won't let me through. Can you help a brother out? He didn't say help a brother out, but you get my point. Anyway.
Pardonnez-moi.
Pardonnez-moi. I would like to get to my hotel, s'il vous plaît. And so apparently Trump wasn't able to do anything for him, or I don't know how the conversation ended because they only caught a glimpse of it on camera. And it turns out that Macron had to basically walk a whole bunch of blocks to get to where he needed to go. He was taking selfies. There's a whole bunch of video of this, of the French president just walking up an avenue in New York City, trying to get to his hotel because of all the security. And that's always one of the frustrations here. If you live in New York City, at the end of every September, the UN General Assembly happens, 140 world leaders, they've taken up the hotels, they all have security. And so it is impossible to get around, and it turns out it's impossible to get around even if you're the president of France. Jill, one other item, sort of a related note, with everybody here in town, they sometimes call this time period in New York City the Super Bowl of spy games. Not only are the world leaders here, all their spy agencies are here. Well, along those lines, yesterday, the Secret Service announced they had brought down a network of telecommunication devices that could have brought down the entire wireless system and EMS system of New York City. 300 co-located SIM servers, 100,000 SIM cards. I don't know what that means, but I'm told that translates to enough SIM cards to basically bring down our entire system here in New York. Would be very helpful as part of a terror attack. They haven't specifically said there was a terror attack planned, but the Secret Service said this was a very serious situation. They found all these SIM card farms basically in abandoned buildings around New York City, and they believe at least one nation-state actor is involved here. They have not named, as of this taping, which country was involved in this, but there's really only a handful that might be capable of this sort of thing. China being among them. Apparently, they could have spammed networks, sent 30 million text messages a minute, brought down the 911 system, crippled cell phone towers. So the Secret Service made a big announcement yesterday in terms of taking down this network. Apparently, they say that it was capable of also sending encrypted messages to organized crime groups, cartels, and terror groups. So that will be another story we're monitoring this week in New York related to the UN.
And the other big story that we're watching, Jimmy Kimmel Live, back on the air last night after nearly a week-long suspension, but about a quarter of ABC stations didn't air it, and that is because two of ABC's biggest affiliate owners say they are still evaluating whether to resume broadcasting the show. So those owners are Nexstar and Sinclair, which collectively own nearly 70 stations that carry the network in markets like Washington, D.C., Seattle, Indianapolis, and Nashville. Kimmel made his first public comments about the events in his opening monologue. Take a listen.
I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight, and the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever. And also, selfishly, I am a person who gets a lot of threats. I get many ugly and scary threats against my life, my wife, my kids, my coworkers because of what I choose to say. And I know those threats don't come from the kind of people on the right who I know and love. So that's what I wanted to say on that subject. But I don't want to make this about me because, and I know this is what people say when they make things about them, but I really don't. This show is not important. What is important is that we get to live in a country that allows us to have a show like this.
Jill, we wanted to make a point there of playing about 2 minutes of the monologue. It actually went on for nearly 20 minutes last night. At times, like you heard there, emotional, but also very pointed attacks at the president. He went back and forth. He would also go on later in the monologue to praise Erica Kirk for forgiving the killer of her husband, if you recall that from the memorial on Sunday. He also talks about Disney, making jokes about how to reactivate your Disney Plus account or Hulu account, which a number of people who protested the decision in recent days from the left canceled their accounts. So he's like, here's how you renew your account. Though he also did go after his Disney bosses, saying he did not agree with their decision to take him off the air for about a week there.
A quick reminder about how we got here. On September 15th, Kimmel's monologue linked Charlie Kirk's accused killer to President Trump's MAGA movement. 2 days later, FCC Chair Brendan Carr warned affiliates that airing Kimmel could put their broadcast licenses at risk. Well, that threat prompted major station groups like Nexstar and Sinclair to drop the show, and then Disney pulled it all together. But Disney faced a ton of consumer backlash for the move. Some subscribers said that Disney's cancellation portal actually crashed under demand briefly. Disney's stock went down. More than 400 artists signed a letter on Monday in support of Kimmel. Nexstar said Tuesday that it would withhold Kimmel pending assurance that all parties are committed to fostering an environment of respectful, constructive dialogue. And Sinclair is only saying that talks are ongoing with Kimmel and his team.
So between Nexstar and Sinclair, we're talking about 70 or so markets, a lot of them across the South. Jill, you mentioned some of the bigger cities there. But Sinclair is known for a very conservative perspective in the ABC stations that they own. A reminder, the way the networks work, NBC, CBS, ABC, all those overall networks and their parent companies only own a handful or so of the largest cities. So they all own the station in New York, LA, Chicago, but a lot of the stations, the vast majority of the stations across the country are owned by either an individual owner, an owner who owns several stations, or these larger billion-dollar companies like Nexstar and Sinclair that own a whole bunch of stations across the country. And so that will be at the core of the future here of Jimmy Kimmel. As for what he said last night, it's actually worth watching the full segment on YouTube, the full monologue on YouTube, how he was able to weave in the comedy, weave in a lot of criticism of the Trump White House. He actually brought Robert De Niro on last night, the famous actor who's also very critical of Trump. De Niro joking that he's with the FCC, and so they had some fun there as well. But then also the serious matters he discussed, free speech, as well as the fact that, he didn't intend to hurt anyone with his comments, though, of course, a lot of people were very upset by what he had to say. But his larger point is, even if it upsets people, he has a right to say it, and he really reinforced his free speech argument last night. So we'll see what unfolds here, especially given that, again, not the entire country saw it last night. So we'll see how the Sinclairs and the Nexstars of the world react to the monologue.
Okay, time for the speed read from CNN. A Florida jury convicted Ryan Wesley Ruth on all counts of attempting to assassinate then-candidate Donald Trump at his Florida golf course last September. Jurors deliberated for just 2.5 hours on Tuesday before they found the 59-year-old guilty on those counts. He was also convicted of assaulting a Secret Service agent and 3 federal gun charges. He faces life in prison. After the verdict was read, he tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen, but authorities stopped him. His daughter yelled, "Oh my God, he is trying to kill himself. He's trying to kill himself. Someone stop him, please." In the moments prior, a sketch artist who was in the first row of the courtroom said Ruth had, quote, no emotion during the verdict.
This was one of the wilder and weirder trials out there, Jill. Ruth represented himself. We told you about this on the podcast during the 2-week trial, despite not being a lawyer. He said he decided to represent himself because the public defenders didn't listen to him and they were afraid of him. He called only a handful of witnesses, including a firearms expert and 2 of his friends, to the stand. By contrast, here, prosecutors questioned 38 witnesses before resting their case. I had outlined how Ruth was stalking Trump. They had a whole bunch of physical and electronic evidence. Of course, he was also found at the scene of the attempted assassination that day and then escaped officers. Add to that, Ruth admitted to writing a letter that prosecutors say outlined his plans to kill Trump. But his argument, at least the one that he attempted during this trial, is that because he didn't actually fire the gun, he shouldn't have to be guilty of anything. But of course, planning to shoot someone, still illegal in this country. Taking you back a year ago, the Secret Service spotted his rifle poking through a bush just a few hundred yards from Trump on his golf course in Florida. And then he was arrested an hour later after fleeing the scene. And of course, that came just a few weeks after the other attempted assassination of Donald Trump last year at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's where another gunman, Thomas Crooks, actually got a shot off, missing Trump's head by just a matter of inches, wounding his ear. Crooks was shot and killed on site. Notably, in that assassination, we haven't learned that much more about Thomas Crooks, even more than a year later, even though Trump did promise to reveal more details about that. As for Ruth, he will be sentenced on December 18th.
From CNBC, President Trump on Tuesday canceled a planned meeting with 2 top Democrats in Congress to talk about issues holding up a funding deal, which could have avoided a federal government shutdown. So the government will run out of money a week from today on October 1st. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had requested that meeting. They wrote a letter on Saturday to President Trump saying, "We do not understand why you prefer to shut down the government rather than protect the healthcare and quality of life of the American people." Trump's move now increases the likelihood of a shutdown. The 2 New York lawmakers are insisting that any stopgap deal to avoid a September 30th shutdown would include protections for healthcare programs, including by extending Affordable Care Act enhanced tax credits. So those credits are usable for health insurance plans purchased on Obamacare marketplaces. So that is set to expire at the end of the year. In a post on Truth Social yesterday, Trump wrote, quote, "After reviewing the details of the unserious and ridiculous demands being made by the minority radical left Democrats in return for their votes to keep our thriving country open, I have decided that no meeting with their congressional leaders could possibly be productive."
The response from Hakeem Jeffries, the top Democrat in the House: "Trump always chickens out." That's a phrase that Democrats like to use. Taco. Trump always chickens out as pushback. Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, saying Trump is running away from the negotiating table before he even gets there. A reminder here that House Republicans have passed a extension to keep the government open for several weeks. And over in the House, they don't need Democrats because of the way the House works. But to get it through the Senate, they actually need 60 votes in the Senate. Republicans only control 53. And remember, Democrats got a lot of criticism from their own, from liberals back in the spring, for effectively voting to keep the government open, even though it extended the way that Trump is funding the government. Schumer got a lot of pushback there. So this time around, he's like, I know you need me this time. I'm not doing the same thing as last time. And so he's trying to push back here. A reminder, again, the deadline is a week from today in terms of a government shutdown. And so, Jill, we're on shutdown watch. We do this several times a year. They always go close to the wire. Sometimes they go over the wire, but it's not technically a shutdown if it's like a few hours after midnight. So that's something we're going to be watching here this week and into next week, as the Democrats here feel like they are ready for a fight here, even if it means shutting down the government, because they are saying, we want a seat at the table. We demand that you actually talk to us and not just pass things while ignoring the other party.
From the Mo newsletter, global health officials are rejecting President Trump's assertion that increased rates of autism could be linked to pregnant women taking acetaminophen, that is the active ingredient in Tylenol. On Monday, Trump and his top health officials drew a link between autism and the use of Tylenol. He announced that the FDA will immediately advise doctors against Tylenol use during pregnancy. But a World Health Organization spokesperson pushed back against that claim, saying evidence remains inconsistent and that there are several studies that have found no such relationship. Europe's top drug regulator echoed a similar sentiment. It appears that the administration is relying on a recent Harvard-led analysis that we have reported on before. It did find an association between prenatal Tylenol use and a child's likelihood of developing neurodevelopmental disorders like autism. However, it does not find a direct causal tie. And in science, that is incredibly important. Trump saying that Tylenol should only be used if there is, quote, extremely high fevers, if pregnant women, quote, feel you can't tough it out. He went further to say that young children also should not take it. Here is some of the president.
It's a small number of cases, I think. But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly. It can be something that's very dangerous to the woman's health. They may tell you that toward the end of the pregnancy, you shouldn't take it during the entire, and you shouldn't give the child the Tylenol every time he's born and he goes and has a shot. You shouldn't give a Tylenol to that child.
Jill, among the many reasons this is so controversial is there's no new data here that shows causation between the two. And we should note that while autism rates have gone up in recent decades, experts believe that is due to better diagnoses. And it comes over the last couple of decades as Tylenol use has actually decreased among women while they're pregnant. So a lot of people pointing to various flaws in the connection there. And it also is really striking a nerve because, well, Jill, what are you allowed to take while you're pregnant if you have pain?
Right, Moshe, I remember I had COVID actually when I was pregnant with my son, and my doctor said, the only thing that you can take if you don't feel well is Tylenol.
And that's why I think some of the comments from the president here yesterday saying, tough it out, really struck a nerve with a number of folks in our community as well, even with the background knowledge that, doctors do say, if you can avoid it, avoid it. But of course, a high fever, not good for the fetus either, and not good for the mom. And so Tylenol is there. Jill, we got a lot of comments about this on Instagram. Several OBGYNs writing in concerned about the way this was presented. This all comes against the backdrop here of RFK Jr. As he took control of HHS in the spring, he promised the cause of autism would be presented this month, September. And this has been an issue for Robert F. Kennedy going back decades. He's been trying to link vaccines and autism. There's been no causation there either. And so it's interesting to see that they went with Tylenol here. He has been getting some pushback internally, trying to draw the line there between vaccines and autism, especially since, again, there's no data there. So this may have been some sort of compromise there. Nonetheless, nothing changes here if you're pregnant or about to be pregnant. But this issue has really hit a fever pitch here. And again, Jill, there's a number of studies out there. There's this Harvard study of studies that did find a correlation in some of those studies, right? But not all of the studies. Then there's a separate study out of Sweden that has been cited for years of 2 million children that found no link between Tylenol use during pregnancy and autism. Instead, they found that autism was much more related to genetics and environment as factors here versus the use of Tylenol.
Listening to a lot of experts, I think one of the big frustrations as well is that it feels like the president and RFK Jr. are kind of like, okay, we got it. Tylenol is what's been causing autism. When they say it's so complicated, perhaps while the data isn't clear, perhaps Tylenol increases the risk very, very slightly. Again, they say that that's not even confirmed yet, but that there are so many other factors here that to just come out and simplify it and say it like that really is not doing justice to this extremely complex situation.
Yeah, I think people are looking for more nuance here. And we also live in a world where people just want firm things, right? Like, tell me what I got to do and tell me what I don't got to do. And it's complicated, right? Because ultimately, carrying a high fever for a number of days is really harmful to a fetus. At the same time, taking an excessive amount of any medication, including Tylenol, well, there's some studies that show that that also has a negative effect. So I think one of the core issues that we face here, and they face with this story, is that issues as delicate as this have to be presented in a very delicate way, in a very nuanced way. And given all of the issues people on both sides have had with public health communication over the course of the past couple of years, especially during COVID and the aftermath of COVID, that this does not provide that much more clarity on a topic that obviously is super important and super concerning to parents.
And in some lighter news here from the Wall Street Journal, you may have seen these viral sorority rush videos on TikTok or Instagram. Even if you are not being recruited into a sorority, sorority recruitment has become a social media Super Bowl with massive money-making potential for college girls. This is called Rush Talk, known as rushing. These girls are earning brand endorsements, kind of like college athletes do.
Jill, those might just be the women in the front of the videos. If you've seen these videos, it's like
Right.
100 of them. Like the best dancers are up front. These like coordinated choreography. Jill, it's, some of these productions are like Broadway worthy.
Right. If these were around 20 somewhat years ago when I was in college, I would have been like fifth row all the way in the back where you just would have seen my forehead or something. Like
Jill,
waving my hand
Jill,
back and forth.
We're not going to get the best girls if we put you up front.
Anyway, so sororities are now the target of companies looking to advertise products on social media. Those who go viral stand to get a debt-free education, expenses paid trips, and a career path after graduation. The queen of Rush Talk is reportedly Kaylin Darnell. She is a senior at the University of Alabama and a member of Zeta Tau Alpha. She got 500,000 followers showing Alabama's rush process in 2022, and her fame became so widespread that her little sister's decision not to pledge a sorority was actually covered in People magazine. 3 years later, she now has 1.3 million followers on TikTok and is making up to 6 figures a month. So these are the stories that teenage girls hear, I think, and think, this is what I want to do, right? I want to be a TikTok influencer.
But Jill, it's not just the individuals cashing in here. It's the sorority chapters themselves. They now have brand coordinators, some of them, to handle requests and take in the money. Names you might be familiar with, like Poppy Soda and Skims, are getting in on sponsorships. They're offering, in some cases, customized gear, or in the case of Poppy Soda, customized cans to Greek life organizations across the country. And apparently it's paying off in terms of sorority recruitment. The National Pan-Hellenic Conference says sorority recruitment registrations are up 13% in just the last 4 years, thanks in part to the social media hype here.
If you really want to laugh, though, you should find the videos where somebody will post a video that was like, my rush in the year 2000, or like my rush in like 1995. And then they'll just slice it back to back with what is going on now. And it's
right.
just
it's like 4 girls clapping, like, join our sorority, we're the best. And now like it's 150 girls, some of them are flying in, like the video is with
now
drones.
It's like the Nick City Dancers, basically.
Oh, exactly. Anyway, good luck to all of you who are rushing a sorority this fall.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure at all. All right, we go to On This Day in History. On this day in 1789, the Judiciary Act of 1789 is passed, signed by George Washington. It establishes the Supreme Court. At the time, made up of 6 justices. We should note the Constitution said the size of the court is set by Congress. So it has actually fluctuated a number of times, I think about 9 times over the history, from 6 justices, and now it's at 9 justices. At one time, FDR wanted to pack the court because he didn't like how conservative it was and take it up above a dozen. That did not work out, and so we've been at the number 9 for about 160 years here. On this day in 1957, President Eisenhower orders federal troops to escort 9 black students into the all-white Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. They would later become known as the Little Rock Nine, as integration and desegregation was happening and being forced upon a number of the states in the South there in the 50s and 60s. To our clue at the top, tick, 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 tick. That was my impression of a clock, for those of you who didn't know. On this
What
day,
else could it have been?
a bomb? I don't know. You know, or like a really bad version of Kesha TikTok.
That's actually what I was thinking in the beginning, or I was thinking the cheer, like boom, boom, dynamite. But I ultimately figured out that you were talking about 60 Minutes.
You know where my biases lie. On this day in 1968, the first episode of 60 Minutes aired, the longest running, still as of today, primetime show in American TV history, created by Don Hewitt, who is one of only a handful of individuals who oversaw that show. You had iconic reporters who would join there, like Mike Wallace and others, making it one of the most successful programs in broadcast history. A bit of music and pop culture to end the podcast. On this day in 1957, Elvis Presley releases his hit, Jailhouse Rock. On this day in 1993, Boy Meets World premieres on ABC. 32 years ago today. We all remember Corey and Topanga, Jill, part of our Friday nights.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, Moshe, but I think I might have like aged out of this. I think I might be a little too old. A year or two.
Yeah. I think I was maybe at the oldest end of TGI, enjoying TGI Fridays.
I got TGI Fridays, but I got the Full House, Family Matters. That was my TGI Fridays.
Right, and then like by the late 90s, it's Step by Step and Boy Meets World, and at that point, Jill was like off to college.
I was.
Jill was off to. Jill was taping her sorority recruitment. She discovered boys, and she was making her sorority recruitment videos, like 3 of them, clapping. Join our sorority.
We didn't have video cameras then, thank God.
Go Wolverines.
Oh my God, memories. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Review us in the App Store. We really appreciate it. Those reviews definitely help, as long as they're good.
Only if they're good.
Only if they're good. If you don't like us, then stop listening.
If you don't like the podcast, what are you doing? What are you doing? Go be honest in our direct messages, not for the public.
Just don't listen anymore. You don't need to tell everyone. It's fine.
I didn't even know you were listening if you hated us. I have other podcasts to suggest. All right. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow.
I can listen to more than